Welcome back to another episode of the Boss Juice podcast. We're in a really cool studio here. We have a special guest today, Brian Hess. Brian, you're well known for the Pavement Group, but you've kind of ventured into this media business too. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this business.
Yeah, man. So thanks for having me, first of all, and good to be here. Good to have you guys in the office here. The media business, just kind of hatched as a result of having a heavy emphasis on marketing. When we started the Pavement Group, we're a nationwide asphalt and concrete company, and so the idea was, well, how do you reach the whole country marketing wise? It's not really feasible, right? You can't do Google AdWords. You can't advertise in every individual city. So what was the easiest path for us to be able to meet people, meet prospects, meet contractors, meet clients, meet employees? And it was social media. And so through that, it was like, all right, well, this social media landscape is pretty busy. We're going to have to figure this out and invest serious amounts of time, research, et cetera, on how to do that. And as we started to figure it out, we'll dig into, so we have top contractor school as well. So we have a lot of contractors that depend on us for mentorship and advice. And so we started looking at, well, what if we provided, social media, video production, things like that for contractors? And so that's where it started. And then it's evolved into, I think we just said we produced like 11 podcasts out of this studio and all kinds of different things. But it's really helped us build community around our business, which I think is the most powerful thing you can do in today's world, right? It's like, if you got a business, you need a bunch of people behind you, cheering you on and supporting you. And so the media has been a way for us to, meet those folks online. And one of the things that I say all the time is, in today's world, I think one of the most powerful things you can do is have community, but take that community that's online, offline, meet in real life, like not just have all these online friends like we were before today, but actually meet in person, get to know people and build relationships with them. And that's what adds the juice, so to say, to the business.
I like that. That's good. That's a good sales pitch there. So take us back a little bit and tell us a bit about your story. So you started the Pavement Group back in 2018, correct?
Yeah, March of 2018.
And why that? Why did you pick the pavement industry?
Interesting story, man. I was a technology guy for many years, so I worked for Verizon Wireless, and I was essentially our main thing in small to medium business at Verizon was solving problems for construction companies, because the biggest segment of small to medium business is in construction. So for years, I was really focused on helping solve problems through iPads and cell phones and all kinds of devices that would help from a technology standpoint. And so I got relocated down to South Florida, and the very first appointment that I had was with a guy who grew up in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, and had moved to Miami.
That's where I live.
Moved to Miami in the 70s. And at the end of that meeting, he was like, "Man, you should quit your job and come work for me." He owned a paving company. And I was like, "Man, you're crazy, dude. I'm in the worst hood in all of Miami," right? And, I was going back to a corner office overlooking the Miami airport. I'm like, this guy's got to be crazy. But I ended up taking him up on an invitation to go to his house for dinner that Friday night. And when I drove to his house, I was like, man, this looks a lot different than the place I was in your office, right? And so I started talking to him about his business, and it was really interesting to me. It's like, my dad was a steel worker growing up, and so the blue-collar industry was kind of, what was familiar to me. And so, a year later to the day after I moved to South Florida, I left corporate America, stepped into private business. I thought, like, man, if nothing else, this will get me a little closer to the checkbook, right, where it's not so bureaucratic. And, lots of bureaucracy slows down things in corporate America. And if you're a hard charger, that can be frustrating. And so I ended up working for that gentleman for a few years. And through that process, I figured out this whole model of like, man, people really need customer service and customer experience in construction. It really doesn't exist many places. And I figured out that we were subcontracting jobs, partnering with contractors on jobs, kind of piecing those jobs together. I didn't know the equipment side of this business. And so I thought, like, man, I can't own this business. And when I figured out that you could do it without owning equipment, that you could just provide an exceptional service, an exceptional experience for clients, solve their problems with technology, that's where I got the idea in my mind, like maybe I could do this, right? And so, March of 2018, we took the leap. And today I think, we've probably got 150-ish customers today. We've doubled the business every year since we started. Been very successful. We're approaching the 9-figure mark in revenue. So it's been an incredible ride, man, to look back at it. I always say, as a high performer in business, you feel like you're never going fast enough forward, but when you look back, you're like, man, dude, we've really pulled a lot of stuff off. Feel blessed to, come to a place every day that energizes me. Get to work with a lot of people that I love working alongside, and our customers are great, our contractors are great, our team is awesome, and so every day I feel like, yesterday I told you guys before we started, there's always days you get punched in the mouth all day, but staying grateful in those moments where things don't go so well, that's in my opinion what allows for longevity in business.
Sure. And so kind of going off that, talking about getting punched in the mouth, you start this business, and traditionally speaking, my understanding of the let's call it the construction industry, it's old school. Like technology isn't necessarily the forerunner of trying to innovate things. So you come in, you don't have a construction background per se. You come in and you use technology to innovate. Were you met with adversity when you were doing that?
Oh yeah, it's still to this day, man. Because I'm, ultimately looked at as a white collar guy in a blue collar industry, right? And so that comes with its own set of dynamics, right? Where there's some people that love the innovation that we do, and there's some people that are more traditional contractors that, would prefer to keep it the old-fashioned way. And so, through that, number one, there's adversity in just trying to launch something new, right? If you're trying to get customers to understand, like, yes, this is how we solve the bigger problem that you have. Well, for a long time, man, customers were just used to, going to get a bid for a job and choose the contractor. They didn't really look at things the way that we were looking at them from a analytics standpoint and a forecasting standpoint. And so getting people to buy into that bigger vision and then trust the company to manage a larger portfolio, it's not always the norm for every customer, right? So you've got the contractors that don't, some of them kind of like it the old-fashioned way. Then you've got customers that are probably not so trusting of, like, what's the angle, right, so to say. And so there's a lot of adversity that you face in that. This better than anybody, building applications and building technology and making that technology work, and then marketing that technology and getting a message out that helps people understand something that they've really never seen before. That is all packed full of massive amounts of adversity, and times that you think, like, is this really going to work, right? Are people going to adopt this, or are we too early for what we're trying to do here, right? So because there's a lot of innovation that happens, and when you're too soon for the market to accept it, sometimes somebody else gets the opportunity 5 years later, right? So,
well, as Brian, I listen to your story unfold, I can't help but think about maybe that was an advantage in a weird way, that you didn't come from that background, because now you got fresh ideas, you got fresh perspective. You weren't stuck in one corner with an industry that a lot of times there's negative connotation with contractors. They don't show up, they don't do this, it's overpriced, whatever the case might be. And partial truths, and a lot of it's a bunch of crap too. But the simple fact that I think you were fresh coming in, and you had some of that technology, understanding technology and ways to communicate. The other thing is too, the first time we met, you took me on a tour of this fabulous office, and there's a lot of things going on here, but it's first class the whole way. And if that was your brand, your approach, that had to be easy to cultivate business too, easier with a fresh approach. And you're right, there's probably old school people say, no, you don't know enough or whatever. But I think you brought something new and fresh, obviously, to the table. If you're growing at the rate that you are, you've done a lot of really cool things. And I would say there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And that's absolutely true. One of the things that I say, one of the biggest blessings that I have had when I started in the industry is that I didn't know any of the technical stuff, right? Like I knew enough to be dangerous, right? I grew up around construction, and my dad had me laying concrete around our house and things like that. So I knew enough, but I couldn't have told you the technical difference between asphalt and concrete when I started. And so what that did for me, though, is it made me focus on your problems instead of, everybody else was talking about all the stuff that the customer really doesn't understand anyway. And I was asking, how can I help you? Like, what are your real problems? What am I really solving for? When everybody else was just going to like, let me tell you what needs to happen here. Because that's another, drawback of contractors is like, well, I know this and you don't, so let me tell you how it needs to go. It's almost like, well, that doesn't create
Doesn't
any
add
kind of
up.
customer experience,
Yeah.
right? And so for the first year, I was asking people what their real problems were, and none of it was related to the work. It was all, you hit most of them on the head. It was communication. It's like understanding the proposal, telling me what you're going to do, and then actually doing it. All the simple stuff that people say, all the stereotypes of contractors was the problems that I heard from those people. And it's like, well, how do I solve for these? Well, technology is an easy way to solve for collaboration, communication, transparency, the speed of turning things around. Like, who wants to wait for a quote for a month?
Yeah, it's execution. It's basic blocking and tackling. If you do the right things based on the right time, according to budget and everything like that, it all comes together. When you start letting things slip, it just unravels. It can unravel pretty quickly. I think one of the things. So, did you grew up in the Pittsburgh area?
Grew up in Uniontown,
All
Pennsylvania.
right, beautiful. I got relatives there naturally, but I conduct a business as well in Miami for X amount of years. And one of the things that I remember people saying to me was, "You're from the Pittsburgh area. Wow, we love working with people from there because of the work ethics." The thing is, what you say something, you actually do it, and I think that may have played in your favor too. Being sort of displaced in another area, living in another community, another region, and with the work ethics and other things that I think that are all fibers, how we're wired, I think that would really help out as well.
Oh, 100%, man. There's a reason why that guy from Pittsburgh saw an opportunity in me, right? Because, to your point, if you're hiring people in Miami, it's not a place where people are gonna show up, work hard naturally. Like it's like finding a needle in a haystack there, right? And so, actually, when I got there, the first day on the job that I had in Miami for Verizon, everybody knew I was the new guy coming in. I'm everybody's boss. Most of the people were late the first day because they work on a different time schedule and a different expectation. It's a totally different environment. And so you can culturally like have a distinct advantage being, an outsider in that type of community because, for me, man, my dad was a steel worker. All I knew how to do was work, right? And I didn't graduate college. I always felt like that was a bit of a disadvantage to me. So I felt like I had to outwork the people with the qualifications. And so all of those disadvantages became the weapons that I used to convert that into success.
So, how did you see an opportunity in that particular business? What stood out in your mind when you started looking at that piece of business and why you thought you could make this work?
Yeah, so it was the lack of technology and the lack of being able to deliver those things the way that the customer wanted them, right? It's like if you just listen to what people want and you can deliver it, right? Because I remember back then, that was 2011. That was like right when things started really, multiplying quickly in the technology world. It was like, I remember having the first thought. I don't remember whether this was like the first year, but it was soon after when Domino's, used to be able to watch your pizza kind of, what phase of, was it being cooked? Was it being prepped? Was it being boxed? Was it being, in the delivery car? And I thought to myself, like, man, if you can watch your pizza getting made, why can't you watch your construction project developing? And so that's what we started doing. It was like taking photos and emailing them to people, right? Morning, noon, and night. It was like people were over the moon. Like they'd never seen that. Because in the past, what did they have to do? Get in their car, drive to the job site, right? And so that's kind of what led me to this national game. It was like, well, if I can do that here and I can get subcontractors to send me the pictures, like I could do this almost anywhere if I have a project manager there or I have, a contractor there that understands. We build the technology. We can pretty much see what's happening almost in real time. And most of these jobs, are not complex. 90-something% of what we do is a square peg in a square hole. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward, but it's speed, accuracy, on budget, on time, right? No, we always say like the property and facility managers and owners that we work with, we just want to get them home to their dinner table with their family with less worries and less concerns than they would working with any other contractor.
Right.
If we can do that, they're going to keep coming back because most of the other guys, I tell them all the time, hey, worry about the roofers. We got you covered on the pavement side, right? Go deal with all those roofing guys. Like when it comes to us, you'll sleep well, you'll be home at your dinner table, and you won't be worried about what the heck's happening on this project if we're doing a good job. And so that was the whole, man. It was all technology. It was like, man, everybody's being underserved. Like, and the things they're asking for are simple.
Yeah.
It's communication, transparency. Like, let me know what I'm paying for. Can you not just say, I'll pave your parking lot, it's $400,000? How about some detail? Like, what's it look like? What's the map? Where's the boundaries? How much are you going to do? What's the depth? How many tons is it? A good one is, if you pave a parking lot like the one that's outside here, you could, if you shave a 1/4 inch off of that parking lot, meaning instead of milling paving at 2 inches, you put it down at 1 3/4 inches. That size parking lot, you could probably save 70 to 100 grand.
Wow.
So what we do is like we offer the customer the load tickets. Here's how much asphalt's supposed to go down. Here's how much we actually put down. Nobody does it. Why? I don't assume most contractors are out there cheating. So if you're not, offer the customer the transparency, the peace of mind.
Right.
Give yourself an advantage of saying, hey, you have access to anything that you want so that you understand what you're paying for is actually what you're getting. Because it's one of the requests that customers have.
I think the big takeaway I've gotten from like your story here so far is transparency is key and communication. I think I battle with that on my day-to-day too. It's like rarely is a customer mad with us because they're never mad because it's taking too long or it's not working correctly, like if we're working to fix it. They're mad when we don't communicate to them what the hell is going on. Like if we get complaints, like we're in the dark, we don't know what's happening, and that's when they get upset. And it's like, I think the technology piece takes you can't lie. There's no people now sitting there telling a story that might not be true. It's black or white. It's yes or no. I think that's key.
I tell the team if we have a issue, tell the customer. If we have a really bad issue, tell them a lot faster. Because the last thing you want on a construction job is the client finding out before you communicate it to them.
Put your ass in the client's seat. I don't even like surprises on my birthday. So the last thing they want is to find out that either product isn't going to make it, schedule isn't going to make it, you're way over budget. That's the last thing. And I agree with you. You got to be upfront and let people know what is going on. The communication, again, basic blocking and tackling, staying in front of people. It's really cool. How did you learn all of that? How did you pull all these pieces together? Because you said you didn't go to college. Big deal. College doesn't mean that you're better or smarter.
I
in
went,
my
just
opinion,
didn't finish.
Well, the thing is, it proves you can complete something. All right? It doesn't mean you're any better than anybody else. And I think you look now, too, at education and the way people either have belief or disbelief in the whole system right now. It's in bad shape. It really is. And the other thing is, too, and I'm not getting into this political side of things, but when these colleges, these universities started taking these political stands and things like that and allow all this crap on campuses and stuff that doesn't really belong there, in my opinion. But yeah, so you have street smarts, you have education, you had, I think, just based on what you said about your dad being a hard worker, you saw work ethic and things like that. So how did you come up with this basic stuff? It's so simple that people step over it, I think.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, man, this is a good, for your audience, I assume it's a younger, entrepreneur that watches this show. People think that like sales or entrepreneurship, it's like the guy with the best pitch or the person with the best, sales strategy and how they speak and, they got to be a great orator. It's actually the best listeners that, that get the most out of people, that are the best salespeople, that are the people that solve the most problems. Like if you don't hear a problem that exists, then you can't solve for it, right? And so again, for me, man, I was blessed to not know the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got into the business, I was like, first of all, I came from a business where, like, if you were trying to sell somebody a mobile phone contract or a technology contract through to Verizon, there's 4 or 5 carriers calling you every month trying to get you to switch. You got a contract. Like, nobody wanted to talk to you. It was really hard to break down a door. In this business, everybody wants to talk to you because they're all looking for a contractor that can solve their problems. And so I saw that, and then I just listened, man, and I heard those things, and I was blessed to have that combination of the background of technology where every problem they told me, I was like, well, I can solve that with this. I can solve that with this. It's kind of like the perfect marriage of everything I'd done to that point in my life. I was 38 years old before I took this leap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so by that point, I learned a lot in business. But most importantly, man, I learned how to listen and, how to take people's problems and say, like, based on what you've told me, if I can make these things go away for you, how beneficial would that be? How many hours a week would it save you? How would that make your job easier? And literally, man, everything that we've built here, everything that we've invested into was based on a need. It was like, whatever it is, we didn't do anything like, hey, we have the next, best idea. It was like, no, I'm just trying to solve the people's problems that I'm serving.
Right.
And that's the nature of business, right? Money's exchanged when problems are solved. And the bigger problems, you produce more money. And the more repetitive and the quicker you can, solve them, people will pay you more. That's the simple explanation of business, right? The more times you can solve it, the more money's generated.
But I think the more you see and the more that you pay attention to things, you're a better dot connector. That's the thing. From listening to my clients and what solutions I need to come up with, I got to collect data, and then I got to be able to connect all those dots to be able to offer a solution I think that's going to work for them. It's the same exact thing. Just being a good listener and then be able to apply that experience you have, no matter if it's street knowledge, book education, whatever. Sometimes it's getting kicked in the ass too, that really changes your focus. And knowing that, hey, you better pull it together. You're going to lose this client or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, the hardest lessons are usually the most valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, those moments where, first couple years in business, there were several times where I thought, oh man, this might be over.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, let's dive into that a bit because I think that, like, you run a very successful business. It does, in my opinion, a large number of revenue. In my opinion, I think it's successful, and to take that journey, especially from you started in 2018. It's been like 6-7 years.
6.5 years, yeah.
I mean, to get to the revenue that you're at now, that is a big leap. I think that's an amazing feat. So, like, props to you. But I think for our listeners, I think it'd be beneficial to learn that, it's not just, with more money comes more problems. And so what are some of the hardships that you've kind of faced while growing the business to where it is today?
Yeah, I mean, dude, there was it was our first year in business. We took on a bunch of ADA parking projects, right? So it was, ADA parking, and they were here in Pittsburgh. So, you try to park. ADA parking, for those that don't know, has to be basically as flat as this table, like 2% slope in any direction. So, you know how hard it is to build flat parking spaces in Pittsburgh.
I was going to say, in our area.
Everywhere on hills. And so we were doing that. We were brought into it at the last minute. There was another contractor doing it that had messed a lot of things up. And so we were coming in trying to be the savior. We're a new business. We love this opportunity. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars in contracts. And, it was a big deal to us at the time. Still a big deal today, but it was a bigger deal then. And so we got brought into it. And so the engineering firm, there were some issues with the plans, like, there was layers of people involved in this. So there was, the customer, kind of a sourcing company that sent it to a bunch of different contractors. Then that contractor hired us. And then we had, our teams out there, trying to piece this whole thing together. And, man, it just got really tough, And there's moments where you're like, are we going to get paid for this? Like, this is just, it's a nightmare. Like, these jobs aren't we had to verify everything with a digital level, then send it in, and then we were waiting for payment, and then the company would pay us, and then they'd come back and say, they sent people back there months later after the winter was over and say like, oh, this isn't in compliance anymore. You got to go back out and redo it, right? And so just a lot of that. And when you're early in business, the margin for error is not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so if you don't get paid that, or you end up with legal bills, right, in going back and forth with this stuff, it's very dicey, right? And so that was one of those moments, man. I remember in December of that year, I got really sick. Like, we were in the middle of trying to complete these things. There was very few employees here. I was the only person that was kind of taking care of this account. So I'm running all over Pittsburgh. It's 2 degrees outside. We're dancing between snowflakes trying to pave the least ideal scenario for something that we were doing, right? And I remember thinking, like, maybe this is it, right? Maybe this is the end. Like, maybe we don't get paid for these and we go out of business, and or maybe the legal bills end up, taking us down eventually, if that's where it ends up. And that did actually end up in a legal battle. It wasn't because of us; it was because of somebody else. But we were joined in the lawsuit. It was 3 years of that lawsuit continuing, and it's actually still going. Still going today. Like, we won the first round of it, but it's still going, and it's just, those are the things that happen in business. But the advice that I would give to someone is, like, it's never as bad as it seems, and don't get hung up in the moment. Because of inexperience, you can become overwhelmed, right? Because you've never been through this before. First time I ever got a registered letter in the mail, right? You're getting sued for something. You're like, world's coming to an end.
Yeah.
Like, I've never been sued before. I don't know how this works. I don't even know how to hire an attorney at the time, right? I'm just like, what do I do? And so, connecting with other people who have been there, huge advantage, right? To have, mentors and people in business, especially people in our business, people that know construction law, and they, it's funny because as soon as you call an attorney, you just get a little calmer, because this is what they do for a living, right?
Right.
So, like,
Yeah.
they're not worried at all. They're like, okay, let's figure this out, and because they know how the court system works and all. But I remember those moments of, just thinking to yourself, like, is this it? Like, is the dream that I had, the vision that I had, is it all going to be destroyed? And, for anybody listening or watching, like, I just said this on my podcast this morning, but if you have a big enough why, you can withstand almost any how.
Yeah.
And, when you have a vision that's much bigger than the problem that you're facing, it gets a lot easier to navigate those problems. You just got to have, you got to have the power to stay
Right.
in the moments that are real shitty.
Yeah.
Because it's a long journey. I think that's what a lot of kids, miss out on, is they I'm guilty of this too, but they assume that you start a business and it correlates to money, it correlates to success, and it takes a long time.
It's going to take more work, and you're going to make less money than what you think. That's the reality, right?
Yep.
Is and I tell these guys that run the media side all the time, like, it's 4 or 5 times harder than what you think it is. Like, because you don't have the knowledge of how hard it's going to be. How could you know? And so, when you start out on that journey, the only thing that can shorten it for you, man, is somebody else's experience, somebody else's failure, somebody else's advice. And in today's world, this is the biggest risk for the kids out there, for the young people out there. It's like, dude, most of the internet's full of shit. So, like, you're hearing all these guys, everybody's Lambos are rented. Nobody owns the homes that they live in. Most of them probably don't even live there. They're just, like, taking pictures.
Right.
So there's all this marketing about how people are making all this money. And so, like, I looked the other day, I was sharing this with you. I think it's like 9% of businesses ever reach $1 million in revenue. 9% ever reach $1 million. And so, like, do the math. What if a business is generating $1 million? What's the net profit? Nobody has 100% net profit.
Yeah.
So how many people make $1 million a year? Not many, right? It's a fraction of a percent that make $1 million a year, right? And so, people out there, it's like, where do you get the advice from? Because the wrong advice is worse than no advice.
Right.
And people are so convincing, man, because anybody with a video camera and a sharp tongue can convince you that they know what they're talking about. But if there's not depth to it, like, if there's not, you know, it's the reason why we bring people through our office all the time. Like, come here, see what we're doing. Like, this hopefully makes it a little bit more believable for people. Because if I was just a guy on a camera talking on the internet,
Right.
there's a million of those, and they all sound like they know what they're talking about. But what they're doing is they're reading this book and reciting it back to you and calling it their own knowledge. They don't have, there's knowledge and there's experience.
Yeah.
And if those two don't go together, that's a risky mentor to have,
Right.
right? Because, you know, what did you say earlier? You said somebody that's been through some stuff.
Yeah, they live a little, you know. You can tell when you see people, there's certain people in your life come in and out all the time, and you look at a person and I go, that person lived a little. Some people are rough around the edges, but you spend 5 minutes with them and talk to them. Like, man, this is a real person. This is a person you could actually trust. This is a person that has maybe fallen on hard times, had bad luck, had, you know, situations that pop up. You don't know all of those layers of things that made that person where they are, either successful, unsuccessful, whatever. But people that lived a little, I have so much respect for. And you know exactly who I'm talking about. It's the people with tattoos and everything else going on. You look at my attorney. One of the things he says, he goes, man, he goes, the people I trust the most, people with tattoos, and what was the other piece? It was something about guys who have braids or something like that. I can't remember. He goes, those are the ones that tell you the truth. They're the ones that are most honest with you. They're not hiding anything. You know, it's pretty cool. There was something too, Brian, you just said about 9% of the businesses don't make it to $1 million, right?
Yep.
That really is an important point to stress about how significant small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses in the United States. I mean, there are so many out there that make up the economy. You've got a handful of big boys that control a lot of things, but man, it's the day-to-day people in these towns and in different regions that they bust their asses every day to make things work. And then you talk too about, like, you got to be solutions oriented, and you don't come up with those solutions. You phrased it perfectly about the education and the experience. You need a combination of both. You need a little bit of the book smarts, and you can pick that up anywhere now. You can Google anything, right? And most of the time it could be true, you know. But like you said, there's a lot of crap out there too. But anyhow, you got to get out there and you got to live a little. You know, Antonino and I have had those conversations too, where, you know, he's had project managers on things and maybe didn't get the right information at the right time, and you know, he felt foolish. He felt, you know, going into a client office same way. You know, I expect people who work with me to be honest and tell me when there's situations that pop up. I never want to be blindsided, and I never want to put anyone else in that position either. So you work really hard, like with all the employees you have, you work really hard to make a beautiful office environment for them. That leads me to another thought that I had while you were talking about some things. The way that you hire, the way that you select people, what are some of the qualifications? What are the things that you look for in a person that you're going to bring into the business? You got multiple business aspects going on here too, but what are the qualities you look for in a person?
I think that's an important question though for like listeners too, because I think me personally, when I first started, I thought, you know, you find the cheapest worker or whatever, you know, make the most, and that's not always the case. Culture is very important. So that's a great question, Sean, because this office is incredible, and I think from everyone I've met here, the culture seems to be great. So yeah,
it's a great question, man, and I'm glad you asked it. So the number one thing that I would say is that people overlook this type of thing. So like I said this morning, maybe it was episode 755, Jesse.
That's incredible.
Something like
that's awesome.
So 755 of my podcast, and you know, I shared this with you yesterday, but it's like, you know, if you're being yourself on a podcast, we're sitting here chopping it up and we're talking about all the things that we're talking about. Like, people understand who you are. They start to understand your values. They start to understand what kind of person you are, right? Like, you know, somebody's not going to come work here that's a negative person, because I'm not a negative person. Like, I don't portray a negative persona. I'm not going to, you know, I don't think we're going to get along very well if you're a negative person or you're not a hard charger. And that comes out on the media stuff. So that's the first thing, is that, you know, it really takes off a layer of people that would probably even try to come work here, right? Like, we get a lot of qualified candidates. And when we're looking for employees, like, we never have a shortage. Every person in this company, I believe, except for 3, have either been recruited by me or recruited by somebody that I recruited to work here.
Wow.
So there's 3 people that, came from ads or some other source, but everybody else, it's kind of people paying attention to what we're doing and then, trying, we've got a waiting list of people that would like to work here, that, we just kind of keep in the wings until we have an opportunity. But there are people that show up, man, that are just straight up winners, and it's the right timing. They need something. We may not have a seat for them, but we'll bring them in the bus if they've got the right characteristics. What are those characteristics? I think you just see it, man. Like, winners see winners. Like you can detect when somebody's a real dog, like somebody's gonna, come in here and it doesn't matter what you put them in front of, they're gonna do it well. I showed you guys Eli on the other side. He's just turned 26 yesterday. He's been a winner since day one, man.
That's
He didn't know anything about this business. But I always say, like, I don't care if I'm going to build a boat or I'm going to chop down trees or I'm building a paving company. Like, I'm taking Eli with me. Why? Work ethic, does what it takes, has that, whatever it takes mentality. No job is too good for him. We had a guy here, it's like the running funny story around here, but they came to me one day and said, this guy said, our office manager had asked him to help her take out the trash. And he said, I don't take out trash. They said, what should we do? And I said, fire him. Because the trash isn't the only thing he won't want to take out.
Right.
It's if you think you're too good for a job, like, it doesn't work, man. You got to have people with great character and good values and a good background and that really want a better life and that want to do, something great, and they want to be a good teammate, and they want to be something more, right? Constant self-improvement is one of our company values. It's like, does somebody have that? Do they read books? I don't need you to be, reading 100 books a year to work here, but you got to be interested in bettering yourself, right?
Yeah,
Like, you got to be interested in helping people, because if you don't want to better yourself, how are you going to better the customer experience? If you don't want to better your own life, what are the chances are you're going to be innovative in our business? If you don't want to have a better life for your family, what's the chances you want a better life for the person that works next to you? That doesn't work that way. If you don't want it for yourself, why the hell would you want it for somebody else?
Right.
And so, when you pick those people, if they want that for their family, they want that for their friends. If they want to be better, they're going to help others be better. And so we just look for those dynamics, man. We don't hire people with a ton of experience. We have, a handful of experts when it comes to the technical nature of construction. Our top salesperson for the year, as of last week, she was a physical therapist 2 years ago.
Wow.
And quit her job and jumped into here. And then her husband was also a physical therapist. He works over there now too. And they're killing it, because winners win, man. She was a college athlete, D1 track person. Just winners win, and losers, find a place that they can exist too. And it's just not here. And, we have a high performing culture. People that love that, right? It's like, why do football players miss the locker room so much when they retire? It's the culture.
It's the culture.
It's the brotherhood. It's the interconnectivity of the people. It's like watching your brothers and sisters fight through the adversity of business. In this place, man, I've gotten the privilege of watching people's kids being born and buying their first home in their family's history, and that's what winning looks like to me. It's building a business and making money, that's one thing, but when you see family lineage being changed as a result of somebody's focus and hard work and determination, like their focus and hard work and determination, changes everything, man. For those who have grown up around, tough situations. I come from Uniontown. There's a lot of tough stuff in Uniontown. And, those people that come out of that, man, there's a special nature about them. There's something unique about them. And when you meet those people, you know it. They lived a little, right? They've been through some things. And they know what difficult looks like. And they either become a victim or a hero of their own journey.
So true.
Because
Seriously.
there's people that grow up in that environment. You could have 2 kids from the same household, grow up in the same tough situation. Doesn't matter what the family, alcoholic family, drug addiction, whatever it is. One child will go on to become something great, and the other one will be a victim for the rest of their life. So it's a personal choice. And so, we try to help as many people as we can along the way, give back to those that need a little, hand up. And, for those winners, man, there's always a seat here for them.
Isn't it cool when you taste winning? Like I tell this story sometimes. I played football a long time ago, but I can remember like 7th, 8th grade football. I think we lost every game we had. I don't think we ever scored a touchdown. I don't know. We were terrible. And then things changed. 9th grade, 10th grade, and then I think in 3 years we lost 4 games, something like that. But it was because you had to lose first. You had to taste how shitty that felt. Then when you win and you build on that win and you have another win, that's all you want then. You just want to be successful then. And I think that's not everybody's wired exactly like that, to your point, Brian, but I think many people are. And some people just need an opportunity, need a chance. And you push them along. It sounds like the way that you bring people into this, you found a way to melt them into this culture and do some really cool things with them. And it's probably inspiring for you to watch these people grow too. But I think there's a fine line too between when you get that horse that's working with you, being careful not to burn them out too, because they bring a lot of value to the table. You don't want to just dump everything. Explain how do you maintain that balance of when you got really strong employees and you've got a lot of assignments, a lot of tasks, clients to serve, and you want to do that without just dumping everything onto people. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's. I think the biggest challenge is, there's a lot of molding that happens here. Vinny, who you guys met, Vinny came here as an artist. He was painting in his basement and in the studio downtown and doing custom shoes and incredible sports art. He did the mural that's in my office, and now Vinny runs our media team. Well, there's a lot of growth to that. Like when you were an artist, like you didn't have a schedule, you didn't have many. You have deadlines, but they're pretty flexible in that world, right? And so to shape somebody into this business, like it takes a lot, right? And sometimes that can be overwhelming. Like it's a lot to learn, just how to function in an office environment, right? We got Jesse over in the corner who hung out by himself for years, right? And so then you come in here and you got all these people around, like you got to balance. You just want to talk to people a lot because you haven't had that for a few years. So like balancing that and learning that. And I think, as a leader, those are easier because I tend to have a lot of patience and grace with that. Like, when you have incredibly talented people, Jesse and Vinny are just 2 of them, but there's a lot of those here. Those talented people are very valuable. And so, to have that patience is easy. It's good when people have big goals because you can push them and mold them a little bit faster than you would normally. But on the Pavement Group side, it's the easiest to talk about the overwhelming nature of what can happen sometimes. One of the things that I always say to the team is like, man, your staffing levels are so important because people don't have enough to do. What do? They cause problems. Naturally, people just cause problems. It's how it works. Like you give, it's why they call it the devil's time, white space on your calendar, right? If you don't have anything to do, what are you going to do? You're going to talk at the water cooler. You're going to gossip. You're going to, that's the nature of people. But the flip side is you can't overwhelm people because to your point, like you end up, overworking people. Now you're getting, 60% effort for all these times. It's like, the guys in construction that say like, man, they've had this much overtime. It's like, man, you're foolish because you're paying, time and a half or double time for a fraction of the effort, right? It's not a good financial decision. And the men are going to get burnt out. So like when you come to the fall and it's time to really produce some work, they're not going to have any gas left in the tank because summertime has already burned them out. So that balance of really paying attention to like what can people handle? How much is too much? When do we hire? Anticipating that. So like having people that are trained and ready to go by the time the flood comes, right? That's something we have to manage every day. But it's important to remind people to refuel what it is that makes them tick too. Like, so for me, it's for my family. I got 5 kids, a wife, I do all of this for them. So for me, if I feel a little burned out, I take more time with my kids. I take more time with my family. I remind myself of why I'm doing it. And so that gets me through those moments. And so like sometimes, man, people just need an afternoon, to go chill out. And you got to be able to detect that in people. that is layers of leadership detecting that too. It can't just be me,
Right.
right? It's like detecting when does somebody need a breather. TJ Watt doesn't play every single play for the Steelers. Why? He's out of gas, man. He needs oxygen. He needs to sit on the sidelines for
Yeah.
45 seconds to recharge. And sometimes we need that too. And it's not just physical. Sometimes it's mental. It's like the overwhelm of the job sometimes can get to people. And they literally just need to step away for a minute. We encourage people to go walk around outside, get away from their desk, do whatever it is. And that is a culture thing. That's like, do you build an environment where people feel like they have the freedom to go do that, right? Or do you build an environment where you got companies now, tracking people's keystrokes? Like,
Right.
are they sitting at their computer? They got machines now that go hit the button so that
The
it looks
mouse
like
movers.
people are working.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is you just got to lead people, man. You got to like create an environment where people don't feel like they got to hack their way through it.
Yeah,
Like,
right. And that's a really interesting topic, though. 'Cause I'd like to dive into this question because one of the things I struggle with is, as my business is growing, and I struggle with. I always say to Sean and to a lot of my mentors that what causes me the most stress right now is it's not the work, it's the people. It's like I'm learning how to build a culture. I'm learning how to get people motivated. But one of the questions I want to pose to you is, as you kind of were scaling your business and scaling your team, one of the things that I always worry about is my company's reputation or my name. It's like it's always my name on the door. So, I take very personally when we mess something up. It's like sometimes the employees might not care as much as I care. It's how do you build a culture? How do you find the people that, for lack of a better term, give a shit as much as you do?
well, if they gave a shit as much as you do, they'd be you.
Fair.
Don't ever expect them to. That's number one. Adjust the expectations. The second thing I would say is when you take ownership, that's everything. You're not going to get it all right. I work in construction. There's issues and challenges and equipment breakdowns and things that are out of our control every day. And your job is to keep rebuilding the process and refining it and taking ownership every time something goes wrong. And if you choose the right clients, they're going to be patient with you as you go through that, right? Because that's the other thing is when you create transactional relationships, expect transactional responses,
Right.
which is like nobody has any grace for you if it's transactional. They want the cheapest price and the fastest delivery, and that's how it goes, right? And the third thing I'll say is I joke about this one all the time. I say business is so simple until you involve employees and customers.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work without them. And so, at the end of the day, man, you got to become a master of people, a master of your own expectations. And you said something earlier that I'm going to turn around and use against you now. It's like, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And that patience in that moment, man, I say this around here, like we give grace to people, especially when they don't deserve it. Because most of the time when people mess something up, the vast majority of the time, dude, it's not on purpose.
Right.
Something's going on. They got, just this week, dude, we've had 3 deaths in people's families in the last week in this building. Do I expect those people to show up here and be perfect every day? I better not. Because if I expect perfection when life is happening to them, you don't hire an employee, you hire the whole person. So that means, you're not just with them during the good times, not when they can give you something. You got to be there for everything. Because if you're not, are you really leading people? You're not really leading people at all. It's the challenge. We have the same scenario as you guys do. Our subcontractors, well, they're not our employees.
Right.
We can't control them. That one team logo that's out on the wall out there, that's why I created it. They're not our subcontractors, man. They're not our certified partners or whatever fancy corporate term people put on them. We're one team.
Right.
You represent this brand. We want you to represent this brand. We want you to be cultural employees. So we're going to treat you like that. We're going to care about you. We're going to check in with you. We're going to send you handwritten notes. We're going to send you swag. We're going to make you feel like you're part of the team. And the more you can integrate that, the more you can treat them. It doesn't matter if they're freelancers. It doesn't matter if they're part of your team, man. It's one team. And we're all trying to do the same thing. We just had a guy yesterday that seal coats for us up in New York. Did a beautiful job for MetLife. And we had sent him a swag box with a hat, some other stuff in it, and he put a video on social media that I shared. You guys go check it out. It's on my Instagram story right now. But he said, man, don't ever underestimate what you guys are doing for contractors. This is a rough year. And we're providing work for those guys across the country that might be struggling to find it. And I think those are the honest conversations that you got to have with the people that are helping you build your business. They might have their own business,
Right.
but they're helping you build yours. And they're a cultural employee of yours. They're a cultural teammate of yours. So it's not about that they have a different tax ID number than yours or they have less responsibility. We got to pick those contractors, and you guys got to pick those people that work with you that care about it the same. How do you find them? It's hard work, dude.
Yeah.
It's hard work. You got to keep looking. You got to always be prospecting. This podcast should help you find some of those people, because if you're getting it out there and people are seeing it, they should want to come work for the three of us based on this conversation. Why? Well, we're taking the time to talk about why it matters
Right.
for people to be part of the team, right?
Right.
And that's an indicator of, like, if people take the time to talk into a camera and provide value for other people, you know, it's probably somebody that has some qualifications and
Right.
traits that you might want to be around. Not always, because there's some posers out there, so you got to do your homework. But, like, at the end of the day, man, like, you got to find those people, and they got to find you. And so that's the marriage that you're looking for. We're always looking for it, man. We spend more money on marketing to find contractors than we do to find customers now.
Really? See, I think that, one of the misconceptions that I think a lot of employees, when they're coming to a business, make the mistake of, is they assume that as an employer, you want people to just come do a job and that's it. It's like, I want people to stay, and so one of the hard lessons I've learned is, building culture. And you talked about kind of previously, giving people a grace period. In my lifetime, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've had people who work for me that have made mistakes, and I feel like I've given a lot of grace period too. But you have any advice on when, like, a good time is to kind of reel things in, or kind of maybe come to your senses and say, enough is enough. There's been too many mistakes, whether it be your own mistakes or a team member's mistakes. I think that's a crucial part too, where I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, don't have the intuition to kind of know when enough is enough.
Yeah, I have a probably differing opinion than most people on this one. We've had 0 people quit this company in 6.5 years. I told you that yesterday. And, I'm proud of that. There's a part of me that says, like, we being too soft on people, right? Is there not anybody that wants to get out of here because we're driving them crazy or pushing them too hard? But to your point, people aren't overwhelmed enough to quit. I think that's a good thing. And I always say this, man, like, I'd rather be known as the company that gives too many chances than not enough. Because, dude, we're all a bunch of screw-ups trying to figure this thing out, right? And so I think right? Like, when it's probably time. I would say this to anybody, is that clear and honest and open communication is key. I am a big believer in the frame of that, meaning the timing, where you do it, how you do it. Like, if you're going to deliver terrible news to somebody, man, like, timing is a big piece of that. How it's going to be received, leaving somebody with their dignity. Like, you don't need to revisit all the issues that have happened when you let somebody go. They probably already know that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, man, can I be there for you? Can I support you? Can we learn something from this? We don't have to be enemies when somebody doesn't work here anymore. I think we've had around 12 or 13 people that we've asked to leave here. None of them are our enemies. Like, they just don't come here every day anymore. And so I think that's a big thing too. It's like, people feel that pressure of, like, man, this person's going to hate me. It's like, well, they will if you're a jerk in the process, but they don't have to hate you. They can respect the fact that, like, the business is going a different direction. It's growing faster. They're not keeping up. It's a performance issue, whatever it is. Like, and that's, it's being honest. It's like wishing somebody the best, telling them what they are good at. Everybody that stinks at something has something else that they're good at, right? Yeah. And so it's not all about just the bad part of it. And I think that's important, man. It's like, I think people delay the communication because they're so nervous about people, disliking them or having some opinion of them. And it's like, they probably know they're not very good at it too, right? Like, most of the time, if you're in a job that's not a great fit, you're probably not going home like, all happy and jolly every day. Like
Nailed it today.
you feel it, right? Like
yeah,
you
they
feel
know.
like, man, this sucks. I'm just doing this for a paycheck, and man, I wish I could find something that was better. And so, maybe our responsibility is sometimes to help them find something that's a better fit. And sometimes we can actually help. Sometimes the help is giving them a little push
Right.
to let them know that this isn't it and that there's something better for them. But for me, man, I've always been somebody that tries to give, more chances than, so if somebody has to depart here, nobody's looking saying like, oh man, I didn't see that coming.
I think I've been the same way, almost to a fault, like
Me
back
too,
in the
man.
corporate world. And the thing is, in corporate world, I had to play by other people's rules too. When you're your own business owner, one of the things I learned was, be smart about it, but be swift too. You can't wait forever because that cancer is going to pull you down and everybody else around you. I want to switch gears though real quick. Brian, you said something about starting the business in 2018, and I'm thinking like you kind of hit the ground running, and the pandemic and mandated closures and all this other stuff hit during that period. How did you weather that weird storm? We've talked to a number of business owners. I mean, a lot of them had just launched their business like in 2020 and did everything they could with their savings and retirement plans to make it all work. What did you have to do to keep the ship moving in the right direction?
Well, I'll tell you this, man. Like, number one, I'm grateful that I had read a lot and studied a lot about, businesses that had gone through tough times. Because, when you start a business, that's the first thing I would say is don't have rose-colored glasses. Like, it's going to happen to you. Like, you're not going to have, within the first 5 years of your business, the likelihood of having, a tough election year, a recession, something happening. 2020 is a pretty extreme example, right? 2008 is a pretty extreme example. 2001, but think about that. 2001, 9/11, 2008. You see, like there's a pattern here. It's like there's only so many years of protection in between, right? In between tough times. And so I would say that, man, like what really drove us to having a little bit of a cushion, because we started this whole thing on $100,000. That's it. That's all. No financing, no line of credit, $100,000. That's it. And so what did we do? We sold a big job. We hired another employee. I could go through job by job and tell you where we did the projects and who got hired as a result of that job. So delayed gratification for ownership. That's another big one. Like if you're getting into business to just get rich quick, you might as well just go get a job. You'll get richer faster because you got to reinvest all the money back into the business. But we had a sense of urgency like no other for the first 2 years. And as we were going into 2020, we had signed a few contracts to do pretty profitable projects in bulk, right? And so we had a group of crack sealing projects that we had an actual maintenance crew that worked for us that went and did those, and we made a little bit of money there. What we consider a little bit of money that now was a lot of money back then. And then we did a bunch of line striping projects for Amazon, and we had gone all over the country doing these projects. We just happened to be on the back end of those projects by March. But we had a sense of urgency to get those done, man.
That's
and
incredible.
I was pushing hard. It's like, dude, we can't take any risks. So when there started to be conversations about the pandemic, I'm like, we got to double down, man. Let's go get these projects done, before and then boom, when they shut everything down, we had a handful of them left. We got the certificates to be able to go. I can't remember what they called it, essential workers.
Yeah.
Right.
And we were able to finish that. And so that capital really, helped kind of get us through those months that were, shutdowns, not a lot happening, nobody knew what was going on, and that helped us. But also during those months, man, we doubled down on marketing. We invested into technology. We took that downtime and made use of it. The other thing we did was every single day, our whole company jumped on a call at 9 a.m. Eastern, and we talked. Sometimes there was nothing to talk about business-wise, absolutely nothing. But we talked about the challenge of having our kids at home because nobody was in school, the challenge of not being able to leave the house, the tough things that people's families are going through as people that, their family members had COVID, they were scared. Like sometimes, man, you just need somebody to spend time with.
Right.
And even if that's virtual, man, it makes a big difference. And so I always tell people this, like, those times of adversity, dude, I get so excited this year that it's a little bit tougher, a little bit heavier when the election's going on and, our customers are pulling the purse strings back a little because I'm like, dude, the competition ain't going to weather the storm like we are. I'm like a big old oak tree over here, standing there waiting, just standing in the storm, dude, waiting for everybody else to go in the house and wherever they go. And we capitalize on those, I think it's the buffalo, right, that runs into the storm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we act like buffalo, man. We run into the storm and we stand there and wait for the opportunities that arise as a result of it, because most of your competition is going to quit, man. And we doubled down on everything. We bet on ourselves. We built the technology, and that really launched the company to, the multiple 8-figure growth that we had over the next couple of years.
That's awesome.
Isn't it crazy during that weird period, like all the lessons that we learned as Americans, as people, as business owners? And I say, we're never going to fall back that way again. People aren't going to let it happen.
Nope.
So.
No, experience is everything, man.
Yeah. So going off that, when you're talking about, your story, you started the business back in 2018. You said you were 38 when you started it?
Yeah.
And did you have 5 kids at that time?
I had 3 kids at that
3 kids.
time. Yeah.
So, I think to me, this is interesting because, I started a business. I always say I had nothing to lose. I could have failed, and I had businesses that did fail, but I had nothing to lose.
Point.
You had a lot on the table. I mean, you just said, I think $100,000 you started the company with. You had 3 kids, a wife, you have a family. You have a lot riding on you. What made you so confident to just jump into this?
Well, let me tell you the other part of the story. So my steelworker dad, we just got this on video out in Denver at our event, but my steelworker dad stood in the entryway of my house that I live in now, and he said, "What are you going to do if this doesn't work?" And I said, "We'll probably have that conversation in a different house, because I'd assume the bank will take this one from us, right?" But I just knew, man. Like, and really, man, my wife was a big piece of that. It was like she believed in me in moments where, I was like, man, because you don't want to put your family at risk. You don't want to put your kids at risk. But I also say this, like, if you have that, that's a built-in drive that most people don't have. I worked out of my house. I had, glass doors on my office, and those little faces, man, are looking in the windows all day long. And so it's easy to grind. And, I always use the analogy, when you start your business, kind of feels like you're running from a bear, right? Like you got all the overhead and the payroll and and so you're just trying to run from that bear that's trying to catch you. And then people say, well, what's it like now, 6 years and change in? I say, I just know how fast the bear is, and I'm a lot better conditioned for it.
It's a bigger bear.
Yeah, but, to go back to that time, man, like, I knew that we could do it better. Like, this is good for young people too, man. Like, there's something really egotistical about entrepreneurship. In the beginning, right? You got to be a little delusional to be able to do it. It's like, man, I can do this better than somebody else. I can innovate this. And then reality sets in somewhere in the business where, like, you got to kind of settle into, providing the solutions people are asking for. But like that idea, that like delusion that exists for the entrepreneur to even be able to go and start, it is definitely harder for somebody that has kids. But I had done this several times, in other businesses. You said, it's the best, what'd you say? It's the best training ground, like, working for somebody else.
Seriously, you get out there and you got to live it for a while. And there's no experience like, when you hit that ground. You just got to do it. And the thing is, when you say, too, being a husband, a father, all these other things, I talk to Antonino about this all the time, because he comes and goes and he travels and he does a lot of things, and we do all this. And when I worked in the corporate world, I was on the road quite a bit. But then I realized, like, hey, I don't want to do this forever. I mean, the quality of life, watching my kids grow up, I want to be there for the basketball games and hockey and dance and everything else that's happening, So it's a balance. And, man, I say that to everybody who's listening to this podcast. If you're in your career, you're starting a business, you're establishing a business, you take care of that family and just be there for them. Because in a blink, my dad used to always say this, your kids are going to grow up so fast. They're going to be young adults before you know it. And he was so true. When you look back 4 or 5 years, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they were like 6 years old, 7 years old. What happened? Where did this all go? You lose that. You can't get it back. So you always got to factor that stuff
Yeah,
in.
and one of the things that drove me, man, was I remember thinking these times where you think like, man, this might not go so well, man. This might, or you think like, should I just quit, man, and go get a job? Like this looks like a long road. Everybody I think has those thoughts, and for me, man, I was like, I'm not letting my kids and wife sacrifice and not get to reap the benefits, and I'm not gonna be the example of somebody that quits to tell my kids that it's okay to do it. I'm gonna suffer through every hard time. I'm gonna be the example. I might not get it all right then, but I'm gonna be a good role model for them to say, number one, you can do anything, and there's no age limit to when you can do it. And if you work hard enough and you're diligent enough and you treat people good and you can delay your own gratification long enough, you can build something pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think the other piece of that is people who are wired the way that we're wired, we don't accept failure. We know we're going to fail. We know there's going to be stuff that just we didn't expect. No matter how much you plan for, there's always this little thing that pops in that you didn't account for. However, I don't just take my ball home, pick up my ball and go home. You got to look at that and say, hey, I just learned something else. Put this in a toolbox and I'm better prepared moving forward. That's just how it has to be, as far as I'm concerned. That's the way that I'm wired, and I think most entrepreneurs, I think are the same way.
Yeah, if you're weak as an entrepreneur, you ain't gonna last very long.
Right. And I think too, like I just want to kind of touch a point. You said your wife was very supportive, and kind of an instrumental piece of that. I think that's, I always say I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have a family. At times over my entrepreneurial journey, I always say I've never felt so alone. It's a lonely battle because, like you said, you take things home. It's constantly on your mind. And I was fortunate that like my parents, my family were like that support group. I found it. You've talked a lot about in your business with your product transparency. I always tried to hide any of the issues I was having because I was like I didn't want to burden anyone else. I didn't want to burden my team, my employees, whatever it may be. And I found that, like, being transparent, opening up with the people that you trust around you, and letting them be your teammate have been a huge piece.
There's a reason why they say misery loves company. There's a reason why because, and dude, that's what Top Contractor School is for those that are watching. It's like, it's a community of contractors. It's why we created the one team community. Like, you guys can join that community. You're going to talk to a lot of construction guys, but you're also going to talk to a lot of other people. Like, and those people, I always say this, man, because I get the privilege and the pressure of listening to a lot of people's problems, right? A lot of people share, what's going on in their life, the trials, tribulations, the trauma they've experienced in their life. And I say all the time, if you told me like your deepest, darkest concern right now, yours, mine, Jesse's, we go around like, dude, you just look at each other and say like, I think I'll just keep my own stuff. Because everybody's going through something that's really tough. Doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's a friend of yours. Maybe but it's hard, man, and it's heavy. And the only thing that makes it better, in my experience, is being able to do it together. There's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And, for me, that's been really the definition of my life, man. I've always had business partners in business. I've always wanted to do it with a team. I've always wanted to be around people because to me, it's like those moments where you held it all in they're some of the worst moments you can have, man. Yeah. It's really tough. It makes you question. It will make you sell yourself out for your dreams. Like your dreams will be for sale if you don't get support around you. Right. Because you'll just say, dude, I'll go get a job. This is too hard. I can't do it. I'm gonna self-destruct. Right. So for anybody out there, man, don't do it alone. Find some group, some friend, somebody that can understand you. And by the way, if you're gonna be an entrepreneur, you better find some entrepreneur friends because everybody else is gonna think you're a lunatic.
And that's why, to me, you said it fantastic right there. That's why this show, is Boss Juice is so important to me, is because that's what we're trying to build here. Is this community or this this library of expertise around, or experience, to know that you're not alone. I said it earlier on the show or when we were talking before the show, that I was fortunate that I had, mentors who have helped me, Sean included in that. And it's like, I think that, entrepreneurs, specifically young men, we have this mentality of you got to keep everything in. You can't show your cards. You can't be transparent. You have to kind of go through this battle alone. You have to be tough. And I'm not saying that I've had a great life. I'm not saying that entrepreneurship is the hardest thing in the world. There's other things in life that are.
It's up there.
Yeah, yeah. But not being alone and, like you said, having this a community or friends that are like-minded. It's very hard to explain to someone who hasn't been in your shoes why you're stressed or why you can't just go to a happy hour and turn it off. It's a different mindset.
Yeah, people don't understand, man. If they don't live it, they haven't been through it. It's hard to relate. And for those people who have big goals, probably the hardest part of it is being misunderstood because you're going to be labeled as greedy, when's enough, like all that kind of stuff. People see the things, the material things that come along with some of the success, and they judge you for that. But in all reality, man, like I manage myself. I value the people around me based on like what's in their heart, man. Are they a giver? Are they a helper? Are they serving other people? And that really for me, that's what it comes down to. It's like people that do shows like this, I try to say yes to as many of these as I possibly can because to me it's a form of service. It's like, man, how can we help people? How can we share some of the struggles that we've been through and make people feel more normal? Maybe somebody's getting sued right now and they're going to say like, oh man, that guy made it through. Maybe I can too, right?
Exactly.
That's the whole idea. It's like, dude, get yourself a good lawyer. Don't pick the cheapest one, and keep on keeping on, man. Don't sell the dream because of adversity. Because at the end of the day, man, if you're willing to sell out for an amount of money, right? Like there's some amount of money that can buy your dream. That it's not really a dream. It's just a wish.
Yeah, I have like 30 plus years of practical knowledge, practical experience, things like that. And there are times when I've had clients or people in different offices, they'll say, hey, can you work with so-and-so and help her to become blah, blah, blah. I can't take that 30 years and transition it right into somebody. I'll do as much as I can do. But to your point too, Brian, podcasts like this and others, we're sharing so much information. For example, like if you had a sales team, I would be looking at podcasts because people, they expose so much information, personal things, personal stories. In a business meeting, they're not going to do that. They're not going to sit there and share all this. In our podcast, everybody reveals a lot about what their inner core is, what's really important to them. So if you're a salesperson trying to conduct business with somebody, watching these podcasts, this is a great tool. You can't get any better experience than this.
Amen.
Cool. But Brian, we had a great time here.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us use your equipment,
Pleasure,
your
man.
amazing studio. But before we wrap up, we always ask one question to all our guests. And that question is, if you could give one word of advice to a young entrepreneur or someone who wanted to start a business, what would that be?
Don't quit.
That's it.
I like it. That's, that is it. One of the most interesting things to me on this show is when we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs in all walks of life, and they all give different advice, but the general principle seems to be that, I think that's a great thing for kids to learn is like, you're going to hit a brick wall. Just keep moving forward.
It's not even kids though. It's people that
It could be
in
anyone.
career changes, whatever, But
Buckle your chin strap and get prepared for the ride because it is it's a rocky one. And I'm telling you, man, the most successful people, there's intelligence, there's skill, there's experience, there's all that stuff. But the one common trait you're going to see in everybody is their ability to withstand a lot.
One of my coaches always said, your head always needs to be on a swivel. And that's the truth. That's in life, that's in business, that's in everything. So yeah, it's cool stuff. Brian, we really appreciate the time. We
Likewise,
appreciate
man.
the fact that we got to move into your home here. This is really cool.
Awesome. Yeah.
We
You
wish
guys
you
are
all the
welcome
best.
anytime, man. You want to bring somebody else in here? We love bringing people in. And
What are you doing tomorrow?
we get to meet the guests. Nothing, man. We'll be here, right, Jesse?
All right.
Nice.
Well, listen, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Likewise,
Appreciate it.
man. My pleasure. Anytime.